Hi, I'm Stuart from HiFiPig. We are at Audio Show Deluxe 2025, and I'm with somebody that a lot of people will recognise, Ricardo from Absolute Sounds. And we're going to have a little bit of chat about Ricardo's history, the history of Absolute Sounds, and we're just going to have a bit of a chat. And I know a lot of the history of Absolute Sounds, but I don't think many viewers will know the history.
Yeah, probably the younger generation. Well, you lead me, or I can start maybe explaining where the whole thing came from. I arrived in the UK, back in the UK, because I was a lot in the UK in the 70s, and then I left, and then back in 76, I came back supposedly to go and work for a record company because I come from the rock world, as you know. So, and that didn't turn out too well. And whilst I was at Warner Brothers, um, I was known already to be the highest budget for buying
Okay.
audio equipment to listen to the test pressings and
I think
so
one of
on.
the things when we chat, and we do chat quite a lot, one of the things that comes across when I speak to you is your passion for music.
Correct.
And obviously the medium that we play music through is important. But what I love about you is that enthusiasm for music. And you're wearing a Love t-shirt today. And so what kind of music do you love most of all?
But it's not. I love, to be honest with you, I've learned to love classical music of late. So I love most music, but what I love is music. I'm not in love with hi-fi. And effectively, the more I go on, the more I realize that I was never in love with hi-fi. I only was seeking to transport with my instruments, call them audio equipment instruments, that emotion that I had left when I left the rock industry, which was being in studios, being in rock concerts, being with the musicians, being jamming. Well, I never played, but hearing them jam, all that feeling, I had taken it like a sponge, and it was in me, and I couldn't get rid of the need to have it. So this is why Absolute Sound. So that's why I say I differ from a typical audio company where it most comes from the engineering side of thing, and then they try to bring in the music maybe at a later stage to make their instrument. I don't look at it like that. I look, does it play music or does it not play music?
I think we have very similar views on that. For me, the piece of audio equipment is just a conduit that connects us to the music and the emotion in that music. And I know for a fact that that's where you come from. So you started in 78. That's, in a couple of years, that's 50 years you've been in the industry. That's a long time.
So I have the right to say that I know certain things. You know, I always say, if you go to the implant dentist and he's been doing that 30 years, you're not going to question him. You're not going to question him. So I can start making statements about how systems should and should not be. So yes, you want to know a bit how it's all started, maybe?
Well, yeah, and then we'll look at how your experience as how the audio industry has changed over those years as well. So how did you start in the business?
Well, basically, I was left without a place in the rock world, and it was quite important because my wife had children, not my children. I was bringing children that she had from another marriage. We had to build a home, so therefore rock was out of the question. So I tried to bring all that by starting buying instruments around the world. And then I found myself, when it was decided to incorporate Absolute Sounds, at the beginning it sounded like a little, shall we say, music club where we were buying cartridges and turntables, a group of friends. And I started going up and down the country with my own little van and a couple of people that helped me a lot at the time. And I was confronted when it was decided to go public, shall we say, with tremendous competition. But I call it very healthy competition. Shall we say, the lion from Glasgow and the tiger from Salisbury were all both jointly at me, which made me even stronger, I think, because at that time they worked very much together, and they were sort of poo-pooing completely the possibility that there's anything outside their environment. And obviously, coming from the music industry, for me, it sounded like a lot of bull, you know what? Because, who is going to tell me that this is the way I should listen to music? So I went to start importing products.
So what was your first big brand that you championed in the UK?
That's a very good question. The first big brand was one that you might not know, but for me it stays very big. Was an electrostatic company. It was called Beverage. Harold Beverage was completely recognized even by Peter Walker from Chord, which was questioned one day by John Atkinson, and he said, "Peter, who does it as well?" And Peter Walker was a real gentleman. He said Harold Beveridge. It was a very, very, very interesting sounding instrument. And then Threshold, I had Threshold, then Krell, then Audio Research. So I built, because obviously I had very little means at the time, so I had to, it was like building a block.
That's quite interesting, because when I first started getting into hi-fi in around about 1980, so you'll have been going a couple of years, but throughout that 80s period, my dream system was Audio Research preamplifier, Krell amplifier, and the front end, whatever that would be. But that was the dream at that point in my life, and,
Oh, that's so
they're
sweet.
your products.
And maybe there was a reason, because my approach is not how does the component sound, is how much energy of that original energy can I transfer back into your living room. I tend to find that now the degree of satisfaction you can get from a very good system is can sort of reprioritize your lifestyle. So in other words, is it really worth to have a couple of £100,000 flat in Spain when you can get only trouble, you only travel there for, get a couple of £100,000 system into your home or less, because I'm not saying that everybody should go, and then just use it as a way to share music with your friends. As you know, I don't listen in the middle. I listen anywhere. I sometimes dance with my dog on the system, but really, the criteria is always the same. Is number one, my room, my audition, myself. Two is the music, so the whole world catalog of music. And three is the conduit, and the conduit is just a means of bringing that emotion back. But that emotion that I come back is much easier to capture than the one where you sit in the middle and wonder if the image is doing this and doing that, and how is the bass sounding, all tormenting, what I call masochist type of sadomasochist type of approach, and is turntable better than digital, or is digital better than turntable? Forget it, just get a good system and explore the wide, wide world of great music.
So you mentioned that you have recently learned to love classical music.
Well, recently, in the last 5 years, yeah.
So if I don't listen to classical music, I've got quite a big collection of classical vinyl, but I don't listen to it. So where should I start listening to classical music?
Oh, I think you should take some of the greatest, like Beethoven, Mahler, Mozart. Mozart is definitely a Chopin for all the piano concertos and all that. But yes, I think that it comes, maybe you could come later to listen to a movement in the Mahler third that I have. And again, I want to reiterate what I did there, is that I rang classical experts about asking me which is the best interpretation and the best reproduction of this Mahler third. And the reason being is that I don't go for audiophile quality recordings. I go for interpretation, faithfulness to the original. So I'm not going for the sound, I'm going for the music.
Okay, one of the brands that you brought to Audio Show Deluxe this year is Dartzeal.
No, no,
You haven't brought Dart Seal this year.
no, we didn't bring Dartzeal. Dartzeal is in a restructuring mode at the moment. Of the new brands, well, no, I branded a lot of Audio Research has got new amplifiers, the reference 330. DCS, we've got their statement piece here, which is the DCS Varese. We've got the new Magico S5s. We've got a lot of products. We've got a beautiful little integrator from D'Agostino. And we've got something that I want to discuss today, because if we have time, is where are we in this digital analog debate? I think that we should remove the stress element that it gives to people to have. This is not a rugby match, okay? This is not Scotland versus England. This is about two audio instruments that deliver music in their own way. The analog turntable will always have a specific type of presentation, and the digital, I beg it not to sound analog, because then you don't have the difference.
Yeah.
So digital done well, what I'm saying in 2025, stop the debate, just go and get more music. You can have both or you can have one, but don't try to, because you own it, to say that analog is better than digital, because you'll be doing something wrong to your credibility. And I have a lot, thanks to this discovery that I did in the last 2.5 years, I have this most incredible music server that comes from New Zealand, from Antipodis, Antipodis being the other side of the world.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
One of the conversations that we had on the phone fairly recently was how important the front end is. And the front end for vinyl goes without saying, that goes back to the 70s, and how important you have to have that or you have nothing. Everything down the line, you can't bring it back what's not there.
Thanks for having listened to me, because I know you're a very busy man. Yes, you almost said it all. What can I add to this is that you are absolutely right. The front end counts. And I realized it with the servers. That it was, I was always looking for, first of all, I think they're very convenient to get rid of your CD collection and to put it all in one location.
And that's the Antipodes server.
Yeah.
So I know that I've spoke to Kasia about the Antipodes server, and she's mentioned it a few times. And one of the things that I've written an article about, and I know Kasia has as well, I'm speaking to later from Wellbeing Strategist, is how these conduits release certain chemicals in our brains, and they change how we respond physically. And the higher quality of the music and the products and the what have you, they are better at releasing those joy hormones.
Absolutely, and I think they're very close to a part of the brain that reacts to chemicals, so they have almost the same effect, but obviously one is takes your sobriety away and the other one just excites you. But I really believe that a good music system will do that.
Okay, so
and the Antipodes has proven, and I want to thank maybe the man that was screaming loud about sources, Ivor Tiefenbrunn, that always said the front end matters. Well, we forgot to say that in the digital world. We thought that a little computer, USB cable, and then a DAC, that would do absolutely no way. That's full of grain, full of noise. You'll never get to enjoy it. But when you do things well, then you are at the same level. In my opinion, because I've had already some recordings which I participated to, I even was shocked that from an engineering point of view, and a studio engineer, I'm not an engineer, by the way, but having been in the studio, from the faithfulness of certain recordings, the relation between, let's say, the vocal and the microphone, and the distancing and the accuracy of all syllables and all nuances is actually probably better out of a good digital music server. The analog will tend to give it a little warmth, but that warmth will maybe tend to cover those little nuances.
So we're talking about digital now and the Antipodes server, and that is obviously the last 10, 15 years, digital has come into the home. Digital wasn't around in 1978, so how has the industry and the way that we consume music at home, how have you seen that change over the years?
Ooh, I've stayed maybe too much in my boat, in my lane. Okay, I would like to say there's two things that broke the before we get to your point. One is as well DCS Varese this year, which has really, I mean, it's really honestly, guys. Again, thank yourselves to the best digital company is in the UK, and DCS is the one. And Varese has really broken those
And
boundaries.
Varese is a multi-box system, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's a multi-box system. But, some of the lower products, because it's a 6 years research, the lower products incorporate some of the technology that was discovered with Varese. Definitely, at the moment, number one digital and the most crazy one because they spend like £6 million or £7 million. I'm not sure. Don't and 5 or 6 years of their dedicated time in making the research. Nobody nowadays will be as crazy to do that, and they've done it and they've succeeded, and people have responded very well. To answer your question about the changes that I've seen in the industry, okay, there is several issues. One is obviously the industry was really, I suppose, developed in the States with Marantz and Macintosh and JBL and all the classic U.S. lines. In UK with Rogers, the BBC, and Lynn and Name and B&W. And that created a stream of listeners that were really very concerned about that staging effect and that accuracy and et cetera, et cetera. Those guys, which is more the audiophile experience, which, I tend to try to get away from because music is something that you should be able to invite your neighbors and you don't have to sit in the sofa in that central position. So what do I say? I still see a lot of these people wanting that approach, and I'm just telling them, de-stress yourself, don't think so hard, because thinking will block that channel to the listening to the music. Lucky enough, we now have Generation X customers coming in, so younger people, and those are more like you and I about that approach. Music is about enjoying yourself. You should be able to play Mahler. You should be able to play the Barry White or a beautiful song by Elton John or a fantastic jazz ensemble, Miles Davis or John Coltrane or whatever, and just enjoy it. Enjoy it, but in a more relaxed way.
One of the questions that often comes up when I speak to people in the industry is, how do we engage younger people to be more interested in audio? What's your views on that?
Well, I think it's we have to create experience centers more. The dealer's got to dedicate his some floor space to create, however small or however big, a place where you can have a real experience, and spend more time with that system when you're introducing than rather than switching around, because the people will, at one point it will get in. We've had some people with our systems that are not audiophiles, and they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel it by this gland that Miss Richter told you about. It just, you cannot stop it happening. It's whoever. Okay, if you're a completely crazy audiophile, you might block it by this type of thinking. Is the bass right? Is the treble right? But you'll block it only for a while, because at one point it's a bit like a gong. You become a sponge, and it just goes in.
So your Absolute Sounds anniversary, 50th anniversary, is in 2028.
Yeah.
What plans do you have, or are you not allowed?
Maybe we'll make a big party somewhere and have invite all our suppliers in one location and just share great music and great plans for the future. I've got plenty of plans. As I say, I consider myself a little bit, because I'm not hi-fi lover as such, so more like a noise buster that takes the grain off the systems to bring that experience closer. So I hope to even go further with that experience.
So we're at Audio Show Deluxe at Whittlebury. What are you enjoying the show? What do you
Oh,
think?
yes, a very well done show, yeah.
What do you like about the show?
Well, it's this sort of intimate environment where your listener or your customer, in that case, the people that you invited, are not rushed to cover 60 or 70 stands and then ending up racing around and not finding that beautiful moment where they can talk to a manufacturer or listen longer to a track or to music rather than rushing around and looking, oh, I've got to see that.
And I do think quite a lot of Chris and I have just been chatting about this and what our vision was for the show. And I think a lot of that has come from speaking to you and other people, and what you've just described as people that gland or whatever clicking in. That's what we wanted to allow people to do without feeling rushed.
Exactly. And the good thing is, we talked about in the gland again, a good system is one that you feel, is not the one you're hearing, is the one that you feel. So it's beyond hearing. It has to go somewhere else afterwards. If you're just hearing it, then you're probably not there yet.
Okay, Ricardo, we're going to catch up later on as well about some other things that you want to speak about. But thank you very much for taking the time out.
And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.